Hi, and welcome back to another Blink development log. It's Monday at about 5:30 p.m. Just finished up work and I'm sitting down to get started on Blink for this week. As I usually do at the beginning of the week, I first sit down at Trello and kind of plan out the tasks that I want to do. So let's take a look at that. The first two tasks you see for this week are enhancements and defect fixes. The first one is iterating again on my particle system. I've continued to get great feedback on YouTube about how to improve this, and I know I still have improvements to make, so I'm going to spend some time working on that. The next item here is fixing an issue where my canvases, or rather the text in my canvases, isn't showing up on multiple devices based on the screen size. So I need to fix how I've got my text anchored there. And finally, the big item for this week is the in-game scene, meaning the scene that you transition to once the screen goes dark, and you'll have the ability to view a leaderboard, see your score, potentially watch a video advertisement to continue the round and things like that. But I'll talk more about that once we get there. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and kick off some particle improvement work right now, and I'll catch up in a little bit. So after spending entirely too long fiddling around with the particle system, I think I've made some improvements. First improvement I made was redoing the sprite here, which is simpler than my previous one, but I think I like that. Something I still might iterate on in the future. Over here in the particle system, I made a couple pieces of, I implemented a couple pieces of feedback that I got on the YouTube videos. The first was adding more variability here with the start size of the particle. The second was adding some gravity, which I didn't think I would like at first, but once I've had it in there, I actually thought it was pretty cool. Another thing I did was the rotation over lifetime here. I've now got that set up so that these can spin both left and right, which I think adds, just another cool element to the way these are animated. And then finally, I added, not lights, but trails. And I can't tell yet if these are a little too gimmicky, but I think they're pretty cool. Basically, there is a 20% chance that a trail will spawn on a particle. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So we'll see big variance in the size. We see a couple trails. We see the trails arc as the gravity affects the particle, which I think is pretty cool. And I especially love the trails for the big explosions because it almost looks like a fireworks display when you get a perfect circle fill. Anyway, I think that's an improvement. For right now, I think it's time to go make some dinner and watch some basketball. So I'll probably take the rest of the night off. Catch up with you guys in a few days. Hey everyone, it's Tuesday after work around 5:30. It's just been a long, slow, kind of dreary day all day today. So now that I'm home, I'm going to try to drum up some extra productivity and work on my UI canvases for Blink. Specifically, I want to make them look good on all sorts of different screen sizes, as right now they definitely do not. So let's get to it. Alright, so it's only been about 15 minutes and I got that wrapped up and working really nicely. Basically, I just had to go in here in my UI canvases and specifically in my Text Mesh Pro elements here, and rather than anchor to the middle and push the Y value up, I just anchor to the top and adjust my Y value accordingly. So that way I know that my text is never going to extend out the top of the screen. So that just works great. Let's figure out what we should do next. Well, here we are on Tuesday at 6 o'clock, and I've already finished 2 of the 3 tasks that I set out to complete this week, which is awesome. However, those were the 2 smaller tasks, and what we're left with now is the big one, and that's creating the in-game scene. If I click into this, you can see that I've created some subtasks here that certainly I can't knock out all of today. The first 2 important ones are the artwork for the end scene and the scene transition. Now, I have actually already completed the artwork. I knocked that out this previous Sunday while I was just hanging out on the sofa with Kate. For those of you who might not know, I actually do most of my artwork with my iPad Pro and an Apple Pencil using an app that I really love called Pixaki. And that's just a really nice way for me to kind of hand draw my pixel art, and it's a tool that I found useful as I'm actually learning how to do pixel art as I'm creating this game. I also do use Aseprite on my computer, as you've probably seen in this devlog or an earlier one, to work on small things if I just had to crank out a small sprite really quick. But anyway, I've already got that artwork done. I'll show you a little clip here, and I guess right now I'm going to work on getting that into Blink and seeing if I can figure out the scene transition. So let's get to work. Okay, so after fiddling around with that for a little while, I do have some semblance of an endgame scene, which is cool. So what I ended up doing was actually creating a whole new scene apart from my main scene, which is what I've been working on up until this point. And then I created a transition over to the in-game scene once the game is over. I'll go ahead and play and show you what that looks like. Already we kind of have a fade out mechanic on the main scene, because as you do worse while you play, the scene gets darker. So naturally I thought that the in-game scene should fade in. So I'll go ahead and lose this round. And we see that this new scene fades in from black. And I've got some placeholder kind of UI elements here that I'll have to do a lot of work on. They're not hooked up to anything and they don't look very good. But those are some changes that I'll make in the upcoming days. I've also got my player here, which you can't move or do anything with. I think I'm going to have some hard-coded animations here, potentially based on how well you did and how high your score was. So I'm happy with that transition for now. It's about 7 o'clock, so I think it's time to heat up some dinner. Kate had to do some work when she got home today, so I'm going to go make sure she's not working too hard. Catch up with you guys in a little bit. It's Wednesday morning, about 7 o'clock. Having a quick look at the little bit of snow or sleet we got this morning, and about to grab a cup of coffee and get back to work on this in-game stuff that I started yesterday. Okay, so it's about 7:45 and I've made some good improvements this morning. I started out by cleaning up some code that I wrote yesterday. I basically had to copy and paste something to get it working quickly, but I've moved that into a function so that it looks a little bit nicer and is a bit more modular, which I like. I finished up today by figuring out how to move data between scenes. So in the main scene where you play the game, I obviously collect the score based on how well you did. And my in-game scene needs to know about that score, so it can display it right here, and same with a high score. So that was pretty easy to achieve. Over here in my game world class, where we collect the score, I wrote a function somewhere right here called save score that's actually just using the player preferences. And this is a lot like user defaults in Swift or iOS development, which I'm already used to. So we've got a string key here, and then the score, and I'm basically just saving that here to player preferences. And then same thing for the high score. If we have a high score and it is less than the score we just got, we'll save the score as the high score. So that's how we save that. I basically just call that an in-game. And then over here, my new in-game scene, here in start, after we get a couple things that we need, just grabbing the score and the high score from player preferences and then logging out the score to make sure this works. I'm not actually updating the UI yet. I just wanted to see if that worked. And over here in the bottom left, you can see I did get a printout here. I'll go ahead and just run the game so we can see. So we'll start this up. We'll go for a low score here. 1, 2, 3, 4 should be our score. And sure enough, we've had 4 printed out here, which is from this in-game scene. So we've passed that data across, and we're ready to start updating the UI. I think that's about all the progress I'm going to make this morning. I'll catch up with you guys once I have an idea what I'm going to work on next. Hey everyone, it's Wednesday evening about 5:50. Got off of work, started on dinner, and you're probably thinking that I'm going to say I'll sit down and start working on Blink again. In reality, I'm just going to take the rest of the night off and relax. In my first video on this channel, I mentioned how I wanted to highlight kind of the balance that I tried to achieve by having a relationship, having a full-time job, having other hobbies besides game dev, and of course working on projects like Blink. So I think taking midweek breaks like this, especially when I've already made so much progress during the week, is important to my mental health and just to keep me happy and passionate about my project. So that's what I'm going to do, take the night off. I'll catch up with you guys tomorrow. Morning everyone, it's Saturday morning around 6:30 a.m. I've got kind of a busy day ahead of me. We have plans to go climbing today and also to have some people over to watch a basketball game. But until then, it's going to be my favorite way to start off a Saturday, which is a cup of coffee and some game development. Now, you haven't seen me in a couple days, but that doesn't mean I haven't made any progress. I actually have made some good progress on the endgame scene, and I'll go ahead and show you what I've done so far before I jump into what I'm going to work on this morning. Alright, so first thing this morning, let's start out on what I accomplished on Thursday and Friday when I worked on Blink. The first thing you might notice is that the start button looks a little different. Rather than have that be hand-drawn art like the Blink logo above, I actually found a font that looks very much like it. So I now use this kind of pixelated font throughout the game. So I'll go ahead and click this to start. You'll see the same is true up here with the score and multiplier text. I'll go ahead and lose the game here so you can see what changes I made to the in-game scene, which is a slow fade in. I kind of rearranged a lot of the UI and I make it not fade in all the way because after all, the scene has gone completely dark. It is meant to be nighttime, and I want you to be able to see these buttons. I wanted to have a higher contrast here against the background. So what am I going to work on today? Today is just all about finishing up this in-game scene here, and specifically I have a couple things I want to do. I need to hook up these the two buttons, the home button and the play again button, and the score. So obviously the score will show how you did in the previous round. The play again button will launch another round right from the screen, and the back button, or the home button as I'm calling it in Trello, will take you back to the title. After that, I wanted to add or create a little piece, or I guess an icon really is the best word for it, to put next to this continue button to indicate to the user that in order to continue, they'll have to watch an interstitial advertisement. And then finally, I want to make these stars in the background twinkle here just to add a little bit of life to this scene. So let's get to it. So I've been tinkering around with this a bit this morning, and I find myself a little bit stumped here. So I've got the back button hooked up, and it's a transition to the main scene, and it's pretty harsh. Now I think I could add a fade to kind of improve on that. But what I'm really more worried about is the transition if you click play again. And what that's going to do is somehow get you right back into gameplay, which I guess means switching back to the main scene and then zooming in on the player. I can't think of a good way to make that a good experience for the user. It seems like it's going to be a little bit confusing to switch scenes and then zoom in all of a sudden like that. So I have an idea to refactor this. If you look closely, you might see that the background is basically just the top right corner of my existing artwork here. So what I'm thinking is, instead of transitioning to a whole new scene when the game ends, after the screen goes dark, just kind of discreetly zoom up here to the top right corner and show the canvas so we never leave this scene. And then if we've done that and we choose play again, all we'll have to do is zoom out and back to show the whole scene like we are at the beginning, and then zoom into the firefly and you can start playing again. I think that would be a much more cohesive experience for the user. So that's what I'm gonna start working on. I think it's gonna be a little bit of work, so we'll see how much progress we make today. Check up in a little bit. Well, it's almost time to go climbing, but I've made really good progress with this refactor, so I'll show you what I've done so far. If we go ahead and lose this round quickly, we'll see our new Endgame Ui. Now this is actually the same scene as the one we were just in, so we're no longer transitioning to a new scene with custom artwork. We're just zoomed into the top right corner of the existing background. We have the same fade in as before. I still need to hook up the score, and we've got these three buttons here. Continue and leaderboard don't do anything, but if you click play again, you'll see that we zoom back out from the top and down here into our title screen again. And I've also I'm modulating the dimmer so that it becomes light again, and I need to sync that up with the zoom so that they're happening at the same time. But other than that, we can start a new round, and we can just have kind of our core game loop here now that we have this in-game scene, which is really exciting. So I'm happy with this progress. I'm gonna make a couple more tweaks before I kind of wrap this up and start putting together this week's video. So I'll catch up with you guys in a little bit after I go climbing. Hey, and welcome back. It's just after 2:30 on Saturday afternoon. We went climbing, we watched some awesome basketball, and I even found time to make the finishing tweaks to Blink for this week's video. So let's take a look and we'll wrap things up. So I finally got the in-game screen to a point that I'm happy with to end out this week's video. So let's go ahead and check that out. It looks similar to before. Up here we have our score from the previous round as well as our top score. And these buttons look almost the same, but when you tap play again, you'll notice that the brightening of the screen syncs up a little better with the camera zooming out. I still need to implement the twinkling stars up here, as well as create the little icon for the interstitial video ad, but I've got plenty of time to work on that next week, and I want to go ahead and get this video ready for you guys. As always, I really appreciate you watching. I'd love to hear any comments you might have in the comments section below, and I'll see you in the next video.